I've had so much fun being part of the food course. My name's Daniel Melville-Jones, and I've been TAing the food course this year. The purpose of the food course is to integrate our Christian faith with the food that we eat, how we eat it, where it comes from. And the format of the food course is a mixture of rigorous reading and assignments, as well as weekend excursions that take us out of the classroom into the places where food is grown, served, cooked, and eaten. Why would we do a food course at a theological college? Well, Regent is a theological college that does train future church leaders, but not just those who pastor or lead churches, but every kind of Christian. And it's a place that's focused on integrating theology with life. So what better way to do that through food, something we eat every day and interact with all the time? The food course allows us to integrate food and faith, life and faith, in ways that apply to every meal.
A boy stands next to a white wooden box. There is a hum, a singing that comes from within the box. It is the buzzing vibrations of 10,000 tiny wings. The boy pays attention to their village. He cares for them, feeds them, protects them, and studies them thoughtfully.
I was really impacted to consider why partnering with creatures matters. Eating underlines everything that we do. We don't do anything without energy. We spend our days moving between times of eating. We engage with others through eating central to what it is to being human and then what it is to relate to God. I think that the food course has taught me to be attentive, to think about the small things that do say something about my faith, that say something about my God. Ordinary things matter. The gifts of creation that God has blessed us with, the things we do with our time and energy, are spiritual and important and require thinking and deep engagement.
As humans, we are deeply connected to this earth, and the most intimate point of connection is through food. Being on the farm at Arasha embodied what we were learning. Kneeling in the dirt next to our classmates was such a practical way to learn where our food comes from. When we were sitting in the guest house living room at Arasha, we learned about invitation and participation. Stephen at Feast and Fallow did this by inviting people into his space in such a welcoming way and inviting them into the stories of the food that he was serving. He also said, "Life is more caught than taught," which I totally feel he embodies. He catches people with his words and stories of where all the food comes from and helps people feel passionate about food and why it matters. And Arasha is doing the same thing. They're inviting people to seeing the world through different eyes, recognizing creation as a beautiful gift from God and one that nourishes us through its food, not telling people how to live or telling people what to eat, but inviting them into this different way of living.
Naturally, of course. My last name, go figure.
Friends gather round the altar of a table upon which they offer themselves to one another, find nourishment for their bellies and souls, and embrace their shared, common, creaturely humanity.
That once you're a few glasses in these wine tours that you do, you forget. Sunday, Tuesday. I've made so many friends in the food course because when you eat together and when you learn together, friendship happens. I'm here with Regent's copy of a heritage edition of the St. John's Illuminated Bible. I'm always struck when I show the St. John's Bible to people who view it. In the Gospel of Mark, when we get to the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000, and I turn the page, the sheer exuberance of this illustration always takes people's breath away. Because the illustrators, the illuminators of this page have chosen to depict the miracle as this abundance of God's blessing, of God's gift of food to the people who need it. And it spills over the page, these fragments of fish and bread that are cascading down the page. And as I've been reflecting on this illustration, it's come to mind a fair bit when I think about food and how food is used in the Bible. God has always been someone who provides food for his people. I love too how the illumination shows God's presence through gold. I'm struck by how when we consider food and how we use food today, we so often reduce it. We reduce the food that we eat to something that is instantly made, something that is unnutritious, something that is flavorless and boring. We reduce how we eat it so that it's so often eaten on the run or in front of the TV, so that the actual gifts of food, the fellowship that it can provide, the enjoyment that it can give, and the chance to connect with others is taken away with it. And we also reduce the Eucharist. This image is clearly hearkening to the Eucharist throughout, and it's so often the Eucharist, eating the body and blood of Jesus, is reduced in our theology and in our church practice to something that is vastly diminished from God's gift to us. And so the food course has helped me think about these things and imagine how we as Christians can see God for who he is, the abundance that he gives us, and find ways to celebrate that and to savor that again.
The tip of a knife, sharpened under 40 eyes, glides through the pink-orange fish flesh of a fresh Chinook. Eating is so essential. I think it deserves thoughtfulness. It's important to think about eating because it's central to all of life. It's like the most basic common connector of all creatures. We all have to eat. Eating is a way to practice, remember, and participate in connection to all things. During this course, I wept, but I did not weep for the salmon. I wept for the injustice of the global food system. I wept for the land. I wept for farmers who are working themselves to death for less than $1 a day. Now a gloved hand flips her over by the tail. Her fins have already been separated from her body and discarded. The knife is sliding seamlessly through fish flesh again, from behind her head to before her tail.
I feel the tension of not being able to fix everything. That I have to sit with the fact I think there will be aspects of the food system that are broken beyond my days on earth, and that every choice I make is sometimes a choice between the better of some bad options. I sat with the tension that much of the church, people who are brothers and sisters, who are image bearers, aren't invested or aren't interested in this topic, and that it's going to take a while for that to change.
The food course brought up a lot of tensions. I learned how broken the food system truly is. I never want to eat chicken. No matter what I buy, there are ramifications. Trying to learn how to balance being mindful and grateful with being thoughtful, and learning to accept that I can only do the best I can do through the grace of God.
In learning about global systems around food, we see the brokenness of it, we see the deep need for change, and yet I still go to the grocery store, I still have to eat food and buy food, and so it feels really hard to manage that tension between what we should be doing as faithful people and what the day-to-day reality looks like.
I want to eat thoughtfully, even though I know that there are tensions in every bite. I'm definitely going to keep pondering the areas of my life that are still to be formed by a theology of eating, but I'm also going to keep struggling with this tension of embodying this theology in a world of systems that disconnect us from each other. In the concrete, arguably non-existent landscape of the city, I'm really inspired by people who are choosing to subvert expectations and to live differently. Mr. Sparrow carves this fish as he carves the great cedar log lying behind his house. With care and intention, he is well practiced in both the carving of fish and wood.
What is a way forward?
What does it mean to be a good eater? What does it mean to be a good shopper? What does it mean to be a good cook? And what is my eating, my cooking, and my buying saying about Jesus?
How can we imagine a just food system that connects all people to locally grown, culturally appropriate, nutritious food?
Part of the food course is eating together and realizing how important it is to eat together and to see the story of Scripture and how often meals are part of that story. And then we look at how communion is done in so many churches, and it's just a morsel. It's not the full meal that's often described in the New Testament. And why is that?
How do I share my knowledge and burden for the food system with other Christians?
Should I become a vegetarian? Should I become a farmer? Can I live a simple life and call it enough?
What does it look like to be a person and a family who promotes a loving relationship with food?
How can I better embody gratitude for the gift that is all of life? Her cold fillets are now being ripped from her body, which is just a thin carcass of spines with a head and a tail. I hear the sounds of her innards tearing. I did not weep for the salmon. but I did flinch as her body was dismembered. Although maybe dismembered is not the right word, because this salmon was innately participating in the memberships of creation. For the Musqueam people, salmon weaves together the spiritual, cultural, physical, mental. As I've gotten to know more of the Indigenous communities around me and read more about Indigenous ways of being, I've been really inspired by people who have lived with this land far longer than I have, and how they care deeply and know deeply their land and the creatures around them, and treat the earth as a living entity. The salmon that Martin Sparrow filleted for us, she lived her life free in the ocean, came back to her birthplace to spawn or to be caught by a people whose ancestors have lived with and eaten hers since time immemorial. She was caught by the net of 2 young sparrows, filleted by their father, and then smoked in his own backyard. Her taste is then shared, preserved, and delighted in by the whole community, and her carcass is returned to the sea. This is not disordered or dismembered eating. This is the fullness of participation in membership. The salmon's gift to us, 2 large pieces of her beautiful pink body, are slapped down into a bucket where 60 more pieces from 30 other fish also rest. They will be washed, salted, hung, smoked, and eaten. This is a beautiful thing. During this course I wept, but I did not weep for the salmon. I grew up thinking that the material was somehow wrong, and I don't think that anymore. I think that the material is incredibly beautiful and important, and that the creator of it all cares deeply for it. Looking at Jesus' life through the lens of food is, I think, a small glimpse into what participating justly in the food system could look like. Based on the Gospel of Luke, it looks like sharing resources, embracing humility over power, eating meals with people, and remembering all of life is a gift that we offer back in gratitude. There is so much tension I feel when trying to think about how I can participate well in the food system, how I can live well with the land and the creatures around me, both human and non-human. I think I've realized that maybe it's more of a question of how to compromise well. The more you learn, the more there is to care about. And it's hard to care, but I wouldn't rather be naive to the injustice. I'm grateful for what I learned in the course, and I wouldn't take it back. I'm grateful that in what some people might consider one of the least expected places to talk about food, a theological grad school, we are considering deeply what it means to live creaturely lives in a created world that is full of all different types of creatures who are innately valuable and that glorify their creator simply by being.
I think the food course helped me figure out why food matters to my faith.
I'm grateful for the food course because it's reminding me of how deeply God cares about food, how deeply He cares about His land, and how deeply He cares about His people.
I'm grateful that we're not just being taught these things through books or through lectures, but by walking the streets of our city, by getting dirt under our fingernails, by hosting meals, and we're being taught from the table, and we're being taught by the table. And I think that's a pretty good start.